What's going on? Welcome back to Ripe Avocados, episode 24. Today we're going to do ANORA, a very hot film by Neon Production Company. So let's get into it and see what we give it.
Daydream, I fell asleep amid the flowers for a couple of hours on a beautiful day. Daydream.
Alright, so ANORA is a Cinderella story set in Brooklyn, but with a La La Land-esque ending. And I simply mean that by the, gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching ending. It follows Mikey Madison, a stripper slash sex worker, who seemingly hits the jackpot, right? This young, horny Russian teen named Ivan, who's pretty much willing to just fork over all his parents' money to fuel his sex-filled escapades and just playing video games all day and smoking a ton of weed. He turns ANORA into his girlfriend slash wife. And when his parents find out and disapprove of the whole thing, her dreams of living rich and staying in that pearly white castle, that fucking beautiful house somewhere in New York, she sees that dream start to crumble as Ivan's family and their Three Stooges henchmen do anything and everything to pretty much break up the marriage.
So we're going to go a little out of order here and switch up, have entertainment go first. So I'll lead it off with this question. This is the fifth film that was distributed by Neon to the, I'm going to mispronounce this, but the Palme d'Or Film Festival, which it won the award for. And this was made by Sean Baker, who's an American director, so this is an American-made movie. The previous four winners of this same award were as follows: Parasite, Titane in 2021 because they didn't have it for COVID, Triangle of Sadness, Anatomy of a Fall, which we've done, and now ANORA. Do you think it lives up to that hype?
I'm not gonna lie, I've never heard of Titane, and I've never seen the third movie you said, but no chance does it live up to Parasite and Anatomy of a Fall for me.
Okay.
Where would
I
you rank
disagree.
it on that list?
I don't
It's
think
not
it's
above
better
Parasite.
No, I don't think it's better than Parasite, but it's pretty good. This movie was definitely a hit for me, and it's not a normal. I think one of the main reasons I liked it so much was because it's very original. It's not. The story in itself seems like a cliche love story. Rich or poor person falls in love with rich person, and they try to figure out how to make it work, yada yada yada. Which it does that, but as you mentioned, the ending is very, I think, realistic in the sense that there's a ton of overbearing parents out there that just will not let their kids fall beneath whatever class they identify in. And we see that with Yvonne's mother. She just despises Annie and never for once considers this to be a real marriage, even though technically is a real marriage. They do get it consummated in Vegas, kind of just seam of the mill, and it is almost a fairy tale, like the beginning of the movie. I just thought it was so original, and it did keep me on the edge of my seat, honestly. A lot of things just went on that were not anticipated. I sort of expected characters to behave a different way than they did, and I just thought it was really good. The ending was obviously really sad and very heart-wrenching, as I think you described it, but there was three phases of this movie, almost. We had the Cinderella story where they fall in love, and that's 30, 40 minutes of the first part of the movie. And then we have this middle part where Yvonne goes missing because he's seemingly just running away from his parents, who his dad's just some Russian oligarch. I don't think they really ever narrowed down what his business is.
No.
And they're just searching for Yvonne for this middle part of the movie. It's honestly like probably the longest part of the movie where they just can't locate him. And it's
So
a full-on
long.
it's a full-on
So
comedy
long.
at that point. I thought this part was the best part of the movie, honestly. You have these three henchmen just going around seemingly it kind of turned into like a mob comedy movie where they're just moving into different restaurants. They go into like 2 or 3 different restaurants and just seemingly like ask everyone if they've seen this person based on things that Mikey Madison's character is telling them. And granted, she's known Yvonne for like a week, and obviously she's not going to know everything that he likes. So it's just hilarious. I thought that Toros, and we'll get into the characters. We could probably get into the characters after we just give our scores, I guess. But I thought Toros was so fucking funny in this part of the movie where he is just every time he looks at his phone, he's like, no. Like when something else goes wrong, it just had me rolling on the floor. Like
That was like
every
the
time.
only semi-funny part to me, honestly. Like it.
Okay.
I don't know. Here's what I have to say on Anora, honestly. And my tagline for this movie, literally, right when I left the movie, Anora ? More like a snora. Like for me, it was just a boring movie, and like again, it's just not a movie for me personally. But like I respect the realness and the grittiness the movie portrayed, and both the characters Anora and Ivan were acted very well. Honestly, like all the parts were acted very well. Like the 3 henchmen were funny at times, but overall, for me, it was a romantic comedy drama, and it missed the mark on all 3 things pretty much, in my eyes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I went. Let's start scores. I went 8-6 for entertainment.
Dude, my entertainment score is like 6.2.
Okay.
Sorry, I might bump entertainment down to 5.0.
Okay. Fine. You can go 5-0. I think that a lot of the things I bring up might change your opinion on some things. Maybe not your scores, but it might leave a little. Might change your mind a little bit. So characters for me, I went 9.0 out of 10. And
Characters for me was an 8.0.
Okay, so we kind of agree there. I walked out of the theater and I knew Yvonne's name, obviously, Annie's name, or Anora. She's actually only called Anora by herself one time when she meets Yvonne's mother, which is obviously intentional. We have like Annie's friends at the strip club.
And also, Igor calls her Anora, right? Or like when they're talking at the end, he's like, "I like Anora more."
Yeah, she never says. She only introduces herself as Anora to Yvonne's mom. And so we have Igor is one of the henchmen who you obviously remember. Toros, who is like the lead henchman, who's also a pastor in his full-time job, but he's also working for Yvonne's family. We have Yvonne's parents, who are only in the movie for 10 minutes or so. They're sort of side characters. And then we have Garnick, who is the last, who's the other henchman.
The guy just getting beat up the whole time.
Yeah, so we obviously just have to give a little ode to Mikey Madison. I thought she was phenomenal. The only other things I've seen her in, which I thought was interesting, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and she's in Scream, the new original with Jenna Ortega. And the director, David Baker, said in an interview...
Sean Baker?
Is it Sean Baker? What did I say?
David
Sam?
Baker?
David Baker. That's the guy who works for the NFL.
Yeah.
He was watching Scream with his wife or something, I think is the story. And he had already seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he said that he reached out to Mikey Madison's manager after he saw that movie and said that she was going to be Anora. And he would write the script, begin writing the script if she accepted it. So she is her character is tough to the nail. She doesn't have any family, and she has this Russian heritage, and that's sort of how the two intertwine. She works as a stripper in, I think VIP is, I forget the name of the, or HQ I think is the name of the strip club. So it embodies, you know, sex work, and it highlights this job that is not, they just get right into it. They don't glorify it in any way, but they also just show that she has a human side to her too, obviously. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I thought this film was so good, was because I don't personally identify with strippers or prostitutes or whatever, but
You sure?
I found myself really much so rooting for her character, even though she has what society would deem as flaws and whatnot. I just thought she had a lot of personality, and you could figure out how she was going to react to certain things. She's very hot-headed, but she has morals at the same time. She's not, you don't see her mistreat people that treat her well. She does like talk down to her boss because her boss isn't going to give her any planned time off or something like that. And she does talk shit to like one of her coworkers who's trying to sleep with her boyfriend at the time. But other than that, I mean, when she's abducted almost inside of Yvonne's home, she panics and freaks out. But then once she realizes that it's sort of part of the problem she has to deal with, it takes a whole turn. So I just thought her whole character, obviously her chemistry with Yvonne is great when the romance is alive, but just the way she reacts and she kind of just takes over every scene that she's in. Even when she's not talking, she's like this presence on the camera that I thought was just phenomenal. I thought she was so great as the lead.
I thought, yeah, no, like I said, I thought the acting in this movie was great. I thought Mikey did a great job playing ANORA, and I thought his name's like Mark Eidelstein or something like that. I thought he did a great job playing Ivan. I've also seen like random interviews of him on YouTube and TikTok, and he literally just seems like he's playing himself, like same accent and everything. But yeah, I thought it was acted great. Again, there were funny scenes, but I must have, maybe I'm missing something, but I know this is getting so much praise right now. Everywhere I look, everyone's loving it.
Yeah.
There are a couple people that are like giving it lower reviews, but like the majority of people just absolutely love this movie, and I thought it was fine, but at the same time, like, I can't lie, I was just bored in the movie theater watching it.
So I do think it has to go along with the characters and how much, at least I identified and wanted. I didn't identify with Mikey Madison or whatever. I just wanted her character to succeed. For the first part of the movie, like I mentioned, it's this romance fairy tale. They talk about her fantasy is just going to Disney World because she's never been there. She loves Cinderella. She loves this whole escapade of being a princess and whatever. But again, she's a stripper, sex worker, whatever. She works hard. Like, she's constantly working. She takes, a week off to go hang out with this guy because she's very skeptical at first, as if it has any sort of meaning. And that's like the whole tragic part of the movie that I think resonated with a lot of people, especially at the end. Because we see Igor almost fill this void to her in the very end, and you just want Yvonne to push back against his parents, and because some of the things he says to her that I thought were really heart-wrenching is when they're in Vegas and he basically asks her if they would get along or fall in love had he not had any money.
Yeah.
She says yes, but she means that. And honestly, I thought he kind of meant it too. It's just the fact that maybe that's not even the right angle to take there. Maybe he's just bullshitting her because he's a Russian billionaire or whatever. He can do whatever he wants. But this whole relationship meant everything to her, and it didn't really matter to him because his parents are just so overbearing and won't let him step beneath his class. So she asks him, multiple times, can we get married? Like, are you serious? Like, don't fuck around with me. Are you actually serious about getting married? He's like, yeah. Like, fuck yeah, let's do it. We obviously find out that he's done this at least one other time. And just staying on the characters, I loved Igor because he originally is seen as like a threat to Annie. He basically breaks into Yvonne's house. The only person she knows in this circle is him. And then Yvonne just like runs away, like immediately.
Yeah,
like
he does
ditches
the
her
dash.
ditches her in the house, just like takes off. Garnick is his like ACL gets torn immediately.
Yeah, he pulled
like
a hamstring on the like right on the 10-yard line.
He's on the couch. They're like icing it, and Annie is just going crazy. She cannot be calmed down. And I thought this was just an awesome.
She was having
scene,
a Tom Cruise on the Oprah couch moment.
which I thought this was such a realistic scene of how I envisioned this would go down. I also, one of the things I liked about this movie was, in most other renditions of this, I think the Russians would have just killed her or done something horrible. That I'm not saying that that's what all Russians would do, but I think that
I was waiting for someone to get killed, so that's kind of
Yeah.
like the vibe it was giving off.
Yeah, we've just seen so many other movies or shows take this angle where these kind of people will come in, not necessarily Russians, but just men will come in and like take over the situation. And Annie obviously thought that the same thing was going to happen when they gagged her, but she literally just like left hand socked Garnick in the face, and Igor like
No,
she tried to like
doesn't she fucking like drop kick him, or she's like on the couch and she just fucking donkey kicks him in the face.
I remember the funniest shit in that scene was when she literally takes her left hand and like I think she gut punched Igor, and he looked at her. He was like, "Oh wow!" Like he didn't even say anything, but he looked like Joe Rogan watching an MMA fight.
He was like,
just
"That was impressive."
Holy shit, that was some nice technique there. And then one by one, I loved that scene because Garnick is like, "No, you like what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you tying her up?" And Igor's like, "Dude, she's just gonna run. Like, she's gonna fucking attack you if you don't tie her up." And then as soon as they untie her, she goes right for Garnick and tries to like beat him up. And then Toros comes in, and the whole house, the whole room is complete disarray. And he's like, "Why is she tied up? Like, what's going on?" And then they untie her again, and she starts screaming rape at the top of her lungs, and like, yeah, just complete chaos. And again, I liked all the characters because it just shows the humane side of them. They don't want to hurt Annie. They just want to please their boss, who happens to be Yvonne's father. It's just this whole like class system or whatnot. But it showed their human sides so well. Like when they're just looking for him, I thought this part was so fucking funny. When they're walking down the boardwalk, and they're like, "Well, how far is the restaurant?" He's like, "Oh, it's like." It's not far. It's like 5 minutes. He's like, no, come on, let's move the car. He's like, no, guys, like, come on, it's 5 minutes. Just walk. And then they're all like pissed off. I don't know. Maybe it's because they have Armenian and Russian accents. I just think this is just an American conversation that I've had so many times before. But it was just fucking funny because just had a complete Brady bunch of characters that had no business being in the same environment with one another, but I just thought it played very well in that aspect.
I will say, I like that point you brought up. The characters played off each other really well, and it was the same almost style of humor as I would see in like It's Always Sunny. Like just talking over each other, blabbering nonsense. But then again, like It's Always Sunny, like, I mean, I love that show. I think it's hilarious, but I don't know, this just it was kind of the same style, but I wasn't laughing as much as I was hoping during this movie.
It's the overtone is serious, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of, whereas Always Sunny, it's just a sitcom and it's just there to make you laugh. And lot
it's
of
so
these
ludicrous. It's like
yeah. A lot of the parts in the middle part of this movie were, I think, just to make people laugh. Another cool thing that, well, I'll save that actually for cinematography, but I just liked I just want to give an ode to Igor's character too. I think he'll probably be nommed for best supporting actor. I don't know if he'll win, but I think he should be nommed because you don't
He was
think
just
so?
like a creepier, or he was like a less creepy version of James McAvoy from Split.
But dude, he wasn't creepy though. She thought I think that was the whole point of him was he was just kind of
He had
the
rape
quiet
eyes, bro.
henchman. But but that goes back to her whole thing, right? Every situation she's ever been in with a man is like transactional. So
Yeah.
when Igor is just remember when Igor offers her the scarf, she's like, "Oh, what the fuck, you sick pervert," or whatever. Also, Mikey Madison's just her swearing for whatever reason. I just thought sounded so funny. Maybe it was just her thick New York accent or whatever. But she was appalled that he didn't try to take advantage of her sexually. Like he never tries to have sex with her, and he stands up for her because he tries to get Yvonne's mother to apologize to her because she sees how much of a burden it is that she's getting this just when they're trying to take the ring off of her finger. He's like,
Yeah.
he just he knows it's not right because of
I mean, yeah.
Her-
I mean, everyone was treating her like shit. Besides Igor.
right. Right. I mean, and it's not like she was being nice to them, but he just recognized how valid her actions were. And I think it's because they both come from this working class setting, right? They're both doing jobs they don't want to do for money, obviously. And we hear Igor mention his grandma like 4 or 5 times, how his car is his grandma's and he lives in like his old grandmother's place. And he does what he can to get by, and she's just completely dumbfounded that he's not a monster and he's not trying to just take advantage of her. The scene when he takes her bags to her house and then he comes back in and has the ring, or he has the ring first.
Yeah.
That scene is that was just a legendary scene, I thought. It's the last scene of the movie basically. And it's just taken this whole thing because Mikey Madison has this shield up the whole time. She's working in an environment where she has to be a tough girl, and she just is in the midst of full on breakdown because her life is falling apart, or the life she's built in like a week or so, knowing Yvonne. And I just thought it was such a nice touch that she does have someone that will care for her. And I don't think they should make a sequel to this movie, but you just assume that Igor and her will somehow make this work. Maybe he won't be her boyfriend or anything, but I think he'll be a friend to her because he obviously really cares about her. Even if she doesn't want him sexually, I think I could see Igor's character just being in her life. And that's why I think the characters were so good, is because I'm going off a limb and just inferring things that weren't even in the movie, but I loved Igor's character, and I just want to give another shout out to Toros and Garnick because they're just so fucking hilarious. Like the things that they were doing, like when they're going into the restaurant and he's just being Detective Benson from SVU to like guys just eating pancakes. He's like, "Have you seen this, man?" They're like, "Fuck you, dude. Like, get the fuck out of my face. Like, I don't care." And he's like, "This generation today is so fucked. Like, no one does anything." And I don't know. He was just making me crack up.
Yeah, it just was not making me crack up the
Not-
same at all.
Not for Sean, though.
No, not for me. Honestly, like the ending scene was very powerful. The ending scene was like Mikey Madison's breakdown and the prequel to her becoming a killer in the Scream movies. But like, I will say that was a dope scene. It's just I keep going back to it. The pacing of the movie, I guess, was just kind of throwing me off. It was just so dragged out in some parts, and again, I get it. It's for some people, but it just wasn't for me. Like that's not what I was looking for when I was walking into this movie.
No, that's fair. So I just want to say one more thing about the characters. I also thought it was cool how when Yvonne wasn't on screen, you kind of mentioned it. It seemed like it took forever, which it did, but I kind of missed his character on screen when that happened because we got to know him, or at least I got to know him very well. They do that on purpose. And again, he's just like a fuckboy, but
He just
you
love
want-
bombed the shit out of her, and
Yeah,
the movie shows that.
Yeah, you want. Yeah, that's probably exactly like how she's feeling, and it puts you just in her perspective, which I thought was a really cool touch. So let's go on to cinematography because there's a couple things I want to talk about. That Tatiana grill scene when Toros is harassing customers, like searching for Yvonne, that was completely improv. So I
Oh, really?
saw this after. Yeah, so Dave, I almost called him David again. Sean Baker and he filmed most of this movie, I think all of it on a 35 millimeter lens, which we're not film junkies. We don't know what this shit means. But
It's just
to
not
my
like
knowledge,
a 40 millimeter lens.
from what I've read online, this is stuff that they would use in the 70s, and it basically just shows a wider frame lens when you digitize it. But it's just like a handheld camera from what I process. I could be wrong there. But nonetheless, this whole scene, they were just in this diner, and he literally just mounted the camera as the actor for Toros was just going around and doing
Interrogating.
this shit. Which,
poor folks.
when you watch it back, that makes sense because it's literally just, it looks like a bunch of angry New Yorkers that are pissed off that they're being bothered while trying to eat.
Yeah, it was like in Practical Jokers. Just hey, go over to that table over there and fucking show him a picture of a lost child.
I don't know, bro. I thought that scene was hilarious. The end scene too. It's heart wrenching, but we had the windshield wipers just very loudly on whatever beater car that was. I thought that was a really cool scene too. It's just epitomizing that they're not wealthy. We know that they're not wealthy, but they're in the car. They're actually playing the NHL Stadium series of a game that was in the Meadowlands from like this past year. I just saw that, but I did like recognize the announcer when the movie was going on. But just putting you in the place of New York or New Jersey, Brighton Beach where she lives, and I just thought the windshield wipers was such a good touch because that sound is so annoying. Like if you've driven a car like that, but that's just like
I drive a car like that.
Yeah,
or
me
just
too.
an old beater that has fucking
Yeah.
shitty wipers.
And that scene was just like uncomfortable. She's now realized that she just has to go back to what she's doing, and it doesn't show her go back to work. You don't, like, that would have just been a very lazy novice way to direct this. I loved how Baker used the windshield wipers to do this, and it's just showing like their point of views from the front seat. It's showing him looking at her, and then it shows you sitting in that other seat when she like climbs on top of him and tries to make a move and whatnot, and obviously like breaks down. But yeah, so like I thought the cinematography was really good. I gave it a 8.9.
Damn.
Yeah.
No, so I thought the cinematography was great too. Keep in mind, you'll hear a lot of these scores. A lot of my scores are going to be high. It's just the entertainment was not for me. But cinematography for me was an 8.5. I thought it was really great, and the colors in the movie were fantastic. Like when she's outside of her stripper sex worker life, a lot of the colors are pale, a lot of whites, grays, just like a very mundane lifestyle versus when she's with Ivan, she's in the colorful dresses, it's sunny, or like they're at a party and the lights are going crazy, or they're at headquarters. So I thought that was a really nice touch. And then like at the end, of course, when she's with Igor in the car, it's snowing, again, very pale white. Like, again, it's her taking that mask off and her being ANORA versus Annie. So yeah, I thought the cinematography was great. I thought the music was good too. I was definitely bumping my head a lot to some of the songs when Mikey Madison is just throwing it back on motherfuckers. But honestly, that was the best part of the movie. the dancing and choreography. Honestly, maybe cinematography is a 10 because the dancing and choreography in this movie was fantastic.
Well, this is a crazy part too, which I noticed after I did some reading up on it. The colors you hit on perfectly. the Baker uses red and blue to symbolize like what's happening in the whole movie. So like you see it's in every scene too. And
Yeah.
I want to go back and rewatch it. So that lens I was mentioning to you, it shoots like 24 frames or something in a second, I think is what I read online. Again, I'm not a camera expert. I don't know what this shit all means. It's just what I've googled. So the blue
24
tints,
frames in a second?
yeah, is that too many?
That seems like very low, but I might be tripping.
So don't quote me on that. But whatever camera he used was intentional so that you could see the blue tinsel in her hair at all times, which is fitting for her costume as a stripper. The blue is to signify, in my opinion, it's to signify this like Cinderella story, that fantasy that she's going on with, because she's wearing that like blue dress blue onesie when she goes over there the first
Blue
time.
onesie.
Yeah. Or it's like a bodysuit.
Yeah. She's
like a
wearing
bodysuit,
Cookie Monster onesie.
No, yeah, not a onesie. So, but then red, on the other hand, they're both intertwined in the whole thing. So originally you see the red with the scarf, and you're right about the whole backdrop of this movie being barren and pretty bland, and that's anticipated. I think that's kind of why he used these two brash colors to just intertwine throughout the whole thing. Like if you go through, and I've just seen other clips of it since I've watched it, but even when they're just sitting in the house during the home invasion, there's like a red pillow and like a red lamp or something to kind of signify that there's like danger going on, because she's not really sure what's happening. When they're walking on the boardwalk, the roller coaster's got big red font, and that goes back to like the lens that I was talking about. That was used intentionally so it brought out those colors even more. And you constantly see the blue in her hair too, because of her fantasy. That I think that's the way I interpreted it, was the blue was her just hoping that this love story would work out and whatnot.
I think that's honestly probably a really good take, actually. I didn't even think about that, because the blue being like that Cinderella story, the red being like chaos, and ANORA being Annie. And then I feel like there were also like purples in the movie, especially, I could be mistaken, but I feel like Headquarters, the strip club, was there were a lot of like purple lights in there, or at least a lot of purple lighting, and
there were, but that back
it
room
makes
was
sense
all red.
with the whole. It makes sense with the whole red blue.
Yeah,
blend.
It was the back room of that was red though, where all those doors were and everything. And the scarf also like changes significance too. I think what it's trying to do is, because originally she's gagged by the scarf, and then he gives her the scarf to keep her warm, so it's sort of like a comfort thing when she realizes that it's not like that. And then she continues to take the scarf and has it like throughout the rest of the movie. And that was intentional, because I think it's sort of just changing her perspective of what's safe and what's not and whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought it was
honestly
really cool interpreting that.
Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about it even more, it could represent like the scarf literally being, because I mentioned that the red is probably like Anora's alter ego Annie, the stripper sex worker, and that red scarf might represent like literally the mask of Annie being taken off, being put on her face, and then literally being taken off.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Like Sean Baker has talked about this in an
We need a
interview
David Baker counter in this video.
It's at least at 3.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was a really cool aspect that they used, where, I mean, the scarf is obviously very symbolic. It first just signifies that it's very dangerous, and then I think it sort of just opens up her eyes to the fact that not every guy that she runs into wants to just, take advantage of her. So
yeah, and just wants to keep her neck warm,
Yeah, and that's kind of all it is. And it is funny when she finally like takes it back from him. She's like, "Why'd you bring that, you fucking creep," or whatever. And then 2 minutes later, she wants it and realizes that he's just trying to be nice to her. So
yeah.
So you went 8.5 for cinema. So writing, I went 7.7 here, and this was the lowest score I had, but still pretty high.
Writing, I went 7 flat.
Okay. And I liked I think what it probably was for me was I was hoping that Yvonne and her would get together again at the end of the movie. And I think that's what everyone's rooting for. But it's just so realistic in the sense that her she was never going to be admitted into that family. And
No.
it's just very sad overall. So that's probably why I knock it down, because I'm not like satisfied with how it plays out, but there really aren't many plot holes in any of this movie, in my opinion, like that I can think of off the top of my head. But I mean, you might have some written. I don't know.
No, I don't have any plot holes. I feel like the writing was kind of lower for me. Again, I alluded to it before, but the pacing for me was just off. I thought we talked about me mentioning the substance being long, and I got railed on that in the comments of TikTok. But I was sitting in the movie theater waiting for this to end. I saw there was one Letterboxd review that was like the first hour of this movie. I thought, wow, I can't believe this is a Sean Baker film. And then after the next 5 hours, I was like, oh wait, this is just a Sean Baker film. And to be honest, that's what it felt like for me. I was like, when is this going to end? Because I'm not gonna lie, at first I did want Ivan and ANORA to succeed and have a fun relationship and marriage. But also at the same time, as you're watching this unfold, you kind of see ANORA open up to Ivan, whereas Ivan just treats the whole thing as a transaction. Like, all he wants to do is have sex and play video games and smoke weed. That's pretty much all he wants. He loves bombs her, and you kind of see that whole facade of it being this like crazy fun marriage and relationship break down when he literally just like leaves her in the dust and goes away. And then Anora's hearing from all his closest people that like, hey, he always does this. He's just like a spoiled rich kid. Like, I don't know what you were thinking. Like, that's all this ever was. And
Yeah.
like, so towards the middle of the movie, I was like, okay, they're definitely not going to get back together. So I was waiting for that big climax to happen where they're standing on the steps of the plane and she's like, Ivan, are you going to like tell your mother to like pretty much fuck off? Like, we're married. Like, what are we doing here? And he's just like, are you fucking joking me? Like, of course we're getting a divorce.
Yeah,
And it's like, it literally like
sour.
rips your heart out and you're like, okay, yeah, fuck this dude. He's literally just a spoiled brat.
Yeah.
But like, to get to that point, it just took so long for me.
But I think that was intentional. I'll
mean,
just
I
play devil's
guess,
advocate. It definitely was intentional, and I just wish that they do a great job of just making you not sure if Ivan's actually a bad guy or not, because he comes back into the fold. Like I mentioned, he's off camera for probably an hour, where he's just missing. I think it's literally like an hour.
Yeah.
And he's back, and he's on the tail end of a bender, borderline still like rolling, and you're not really sure what he's thinking, because the last time you see him, he obviously runs away, but you could kind of you can reprimand that or come to grips with that, because whatever, he just ran because he was scared. He didn't want to see his parents. And then you see him back again, and you're like, oh, is he just still drunk? Like, he doesn't really know what's going on. Maybe when he sobers up, he's going to be like, yo, fuck this. Because when we see Garnick first come into the house, Annie, like, stands up to both of them. She's like, no, fuck you. Like, I'm not giving you my ring. And he, like, backs her up, too. And it's...
Well, she's literally like, get out of my house. Like, this is my house.
Yeah. And I love that whole part when they were playing off of one another, because it felt like that... It just felt like Yvonne was gonna stand up for her, and like they show him, they obviously make it clear that he's the son of a rich dude, but even when they go to Vegas and he's busting balls with the manager of the hotel, I was like, oh shit, he's just a douchebag. But then he like jokes it off or whatever. Like it's obviously like he's just trying to big dick the guy and say like, oh, like why isn't my room ready? He's like, no, I'm just kidding. Like I don't really think he actually cares. I think he is a pretty laid back guy, and I don't think he would be a bad person if he didn't have money. And that's where the
I don't know though, because the thing is, he's just one of those spoiled brats that has never been held accountable in his life, because like his parents have such a high status and so much money that everyone is just like kissing his feet the whole time. So the second that he hears, like, because even when Ivan and even when what are the fucking henchmen's name? Tauros, Garnick, Igor. Well, not really Igor, but when Tauros and Garnick are like telling him like, "Hey, you gotta like do this shit. Like your parents aren't happy with it." He's telling him like, "Fuck off, fuck off." But the second he hears his parents are coming to the U.S., that's when he's like, he runs, and because that's the only people that can hold him accountable. So like. Mm-hmm. When you think like he's gonna stand up for Nora, or like I never really thought he would stand up for Nora, because, or I was hoping, of course, in the first like 30 minutes or whatever, however long, dude, the movie seemed like 5 hours long, but when he's first having that like honeymoon phase and Cinderella phase with Nora, you think like he might stand up for her, but the second you realize how scared he is of his parents, you knew, or for me personally, I was like, oh, he's flipping. Like, he's jumping ship immediately.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to change, especially the way he embraces his mom. It's almost like he's 3 years old. He's, like, hugging her stomach, and she's, like, patting him on the head. And
yeah.
That part was so sad because, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Annie introduces herself as ANORA because she just wants to be accepted so badly, and she doesn't want to be a stripper or a sex worker. She wants to just have a love fantasy, like get married, live happily ever after, whatever you want to call it. And I just think her character is like very pure, not like her profession, but just the way she cares about other people, and she just seems like so, I don't know, she just was done so dirty, and that's why it's so like such a sucker punch at the very end. But nonetheless, I think it all makes a lot of sense. And that last scene was just so fucking well done. And that's why I think this movie just resonated with me very well. Because it kind of ends in a bittersweet way when they annul the marriage and whatnot. I didn't really know how they were going to reconcile the whole thing. Like, if her and Igor if they, like, flashed forward, like, that's what like, the Avengers would have done. They would have, like, flashed forward, and like two of them would have just been like married, or like Harry Potter, like married with children and like living in a white picket fence or whatever. And it's just one day later and you just see the reality setting in. And that's why I just thought it was really well done, because it's just so realistic. This is exactly how this would happen if it occurred in real life, which maybe it probably has to some extent. I know this is a fiction story, but I'm sure there's been some rendition of this that's gone on in human history.
Oh, for sure. 1,000%.
Yeah.
A guy love bombing a girl, a guy with some money love bombing a girl, and then like leaving her out to dust. Yeah. That's
I mean, like with the whole, with his parents being like foreigners and then having them fly to the U.S. to annul the marriage and all this kind of shit. Like that part is the Hollywood tizing of the movie or whatever, but I don't know. I didn't think it was too long, because I loved the middle part. When they're looking for Yvonne, I thought this was like the best part of the movie. The romance part in the beginning was pretty quick, but it got to the point. I thought it was a great build up. You see Annie working for like 5 minutes, and then you meet Yvonne. You figure out like where their relationship goes. And I also thought it was very nice how they just showed how Annie was into him based on things he was doing, not monetary wise. Like when he's just, I think it's the first time they fuck, when he's just in his room and he pulls up that TV and like starts ripping his dab rig or whatever, and she's just like looking at him and realizes that he's just kind of like a goofball, but even though he has all this money, you could just tell she's into his personality. Like, she doesn't give a shit that he's living in this lavish house. Like, she thinks it's cool, obviously, and because, duh, if she's gonna marry him or whatever, like, she would inherit this and whatnot. But she's not even thinking that because he springs the whole marriage on her last second. She never expected him to do that.
Do you think that early on, though, she was into him for him or for his money? Because I think it took a while. I think she was into the idea of getting paid.
I think it was that, but I also definitely think that he definitely charmed her to a point where she was in love with him, for sure. When they're in Vegas and everything, and I brought up the scene with the hotel manager, but I think I think she just liked his personality, because as a viewer, I liked Ivan's personality given his circumstances. Like, he could have just been livid, actually livid at that hotel manager for not having their room ready or whatever, but she still sees him. He has a humane side to him. He's a spoiled rich kid, but I don't know.
To be honest, I think what it was she was opening up to him, or at least like trying to learn more about him. And like because she asked him like a bunch of questions, like, what do you do for work? Of course, like the preliminary questions, because he's living in a mansion as a 21-year-old. But then also, like, she sees him be funny and goofy and have a bunch of friends seemingly and throw these lavish parties. And I think she was like opening up to the idea of him more versus just like it being a transaction of money and sex. But on the flip side, you as a viewer, you're watching this, and when it comes to the romance side, all it showed was like him fucking her, playing video games, smoking weed, and then him fucking her again. So like for him, it was literally just love bombing her. That's what it seemed.
Yeah, like. Yeah. But it also was an escape. Like, she didn't have to do her work anymore, and she didn't want to do that, obviously. But I also think the Russian aspect, the fact that she had the Russian heritage, was something that she identified with, and it made her feel safe and secure. And I don't know. I do think she liked his personality a lot, to, like, put it this way. That question he asked her, if they didn't have any money, I think Annie still would have married him and been totally happy with that whole thing. I just think she wanted a man to care for her and not be mistreating her.
No, 100%.
That's why it's so sad.
But again, that's literally first ballot Hall of Fame love bombing. Like, that's
also 100% of all women, is they all want that. And what I mean, maybe not 100%, but
I think most people want that.
Yeah. Most people want that.
Yeah, I would like that.
Yeah, and I think that's just why this movie is so. We just keep saying heart-wrenching. It's just very. It doesn't make you feel great after you see it, but I think it's just impressive how they use this whole escapade of, or that's not the right word, the whole idea of stripping and sex work, and they make it into this feature film where I just really fucking cared about her whole life, and I wanted everything to work for her. So yeah,
I guess I wish it had a blink twice kind of ending where she takes over the Russian wealth.
That would have been like Saltburn or something like that.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, I thought this was a solid movie. I really think this is one of the better movies I've seen all year. It's definitely up there for me, but I got more out of the entertainment, obviously, than you did. But that's fine. I mean, it's not going to be for everybody.
I think I'm going to put Red 1 over ANORA.
I can't wait to see that. So that gives us a final score here of a 7.8 for ANORA, which I think is pretty fair. I probably brought it up in every category versus you, but that's sort of what the rating scale is for. I wouldn't say it's, I don't know, bro. I thought it was really good, though. It's not, I don't know. Let the people decide. I think a lot of people like this movie, but there's definitely those on the fence or on the other side of it, which you're going to get with mostly everything. So
Yeah, no, I respect the movie. I thought it was really well done. It's just not a movie for me. Like when I'm thinking of a romantic comedy or like a rom-com drama, whatever you want to bucket this as, it just wasn't what I was expecting going into it, especially with all the high praise around it. It fell short of that expectation for me. It was dragged out. Or in my eyes, it felt dragged out because I just felt like I was sitting in the movie theater, like waiting for it to end. But again, there were pieces of it that were really well done that I enjoyed and respect, but overall, just kind of missed the mark for me.
I would recommend this to others. I don't know if Sean would, but I just thought it played out really well, and I was sort of not expecting it to be very good when I went in to see it. I did see that people liked it, but I didn't really watch a trailer for it. I think I just saw maybe a teaser in the movies prior. So I went in pretty blind, and I was very pleasantly surprised to what I saw. And honestly, I feel like when I do that for most movies, when I don't raise my expectations up, that is sort of how I might view something. So, anything else?
I got nothing else. It's not breaking my top 25 movies of the last 25 years, that's for sure.
Well, we will be back next week with episode 25, but until then, peace out.
Deuces.
I dream of the places I've been with you, how we sat with the street.